The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
we are now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Thursday, October 6, 2016. Thank you so much for joining us. I always appreciate you tuning in and listening. Thanks to all of our viewers, all of our supporters, all of our patrons, and even those people who can't be a patron, but you share our videos and you talk about the Benjamin Dixon Show. That helps out a tremendous amount. I want to thank all of you because everyone, no matter what it is that you do, even if you're just listening and you can't do anything else but listen, you help make this show possible. So unfortunately, our phones are down tonight. I'll just tell you that now so that you guys don't get frustrated calling in. I'm sure out of habit, I'm going to say the phone number at least 4 times tonight, 857-600-0518. That's the first time. So I have 3 more times and I'm going to say it. But I've got to talk to our phone provider. I have no idea. Skype, what's up? I will definitely send you a nasty tweet after the show is over because, yeah, I don't like not having phones. But nevertheless, you can still communicate with me. Send me a tweet at the BPD Show. Leave a comment in the chat room here on YouTube or a comment in the chat room on the internet radio broadcast and let us know. Give us some feedback. We have some pretty good stories tonight that we want to. Oh, hang on a second. This is interesting. Okay, never mind. So, yeah, it's still interesting, but I can't tell you what it is. All right. So, last night we touched on Hurricane Matthew, and with any situation, it can possibly be a fast-paced change of events. Things can happen so quickly, and before I was able to publish videos this morning, the reality of what Matthew had done in Haiti was dramatically different than what we discussed last night. So far, at least 261 people have died in Haiti because of Hurricane Matthew. And this is according to Fox News. The head of the Civil Protection Agency in Haiti, Marie Alta Jean-Baptiste, said that the storm also made roads impassable and it knocked out communications in the Grand Anse department on the opposite side of the narrow peninsula from where Matthew first hit. There's a report of over 3,200 homes that were destroyed along the southern peninsula. The southwestern town of Jeremy was, quote, pretty much wiped out from the seaboard all the way to the cathedral. A radio host in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, said to the BBC on Thursday. One official for aid agency told the BBC that more than 10,000 people has been displaced in the south alone. So devastating. I mean, Haiti, it wasn't just 6 years ago, the earthquake that killed about 200,000, if not more, people and displaced 1.5 million people were displaced. Just shortly after that, now we have this hurricane that's going back through and devastating the property there, the homes there. It's a very, very precarious situation there. I have only a few images, but I do want to share. So it's not just the winds, it's also the flooding that has really devastated the people of Haiti, and not only the people of Haiti, but also throughout the region. And Hurricane Matthew is scheduled to hit tomorrow morning or early tonight, overnight, in the Palm Beach areas. State of emergency again has been declared. People have evacuated from the coastal regions. So we just want everyone to be mindful of the reality. and I'm from Florida, so I kind of understand how cavalier some people can be. But this is estimated to be the biggest hurricane to hit potentially, and it depends on the speed with which it hits when it hits land. But since Andrew, I think I read somewhere that it's going to be bigger than hurricane, or the biggest since Andrew. I want to make sure I use those words, descriptors correctly. But again, so Haiti has been hit very significantly, and over 261 people have been confirmed dead, and so much property damage. An entire town devastated. One town, I believe it was the homes that were along the southern peninsula. I believe it was only 1% of the properties in that area were left standing. That means 99% of the entire town basically was completely ravaged and destroyed by Hurricane Matthew. Pretty grim picture. So whatever you do, I don't know, if you pray, if you just send good thoughts, or if you're just thinking good thoughts, anything and everything, let's just keep them in our minds. And, good luck to everyone in Florida. On the flip side, if there is a bright side to hurricanes, I went through, in my 15 years in Florida, I think I went through at least 5 hurricanes. And only of the 5, I would say maybe 2 were significant. I think there was Ivan that year. We had same year as Katrina. Like everybody was getting hit. If there is a bright side to it, it's the camaraderie. It's the joining together. The communities really come together in these type of crises. You see neighbors feeding each other. I mean, after the hurricane that hit around Halloween of 2005, and so many, I can't remember the name, but we were without power for 2 weeks, which means that we couldn't get any, we had to depend on the community. We had to depend on our neighbors. We had to depend on companies that were just giving away food so it wouldn't spoil. We were dependent on the state agencies to help out. But for 2 weeks, we were without power. And it really brings people together in those types of situations. So that's one shining glimmer of goodness that comes out of these types of events. The other thing is the hurricane parties. I'm going to be quite honest with you. You get locked in with about, depending on how many people you know and how many people you want to hang out with for a few days, you lock yourself in. You shutter up the windows, you break out the cards, you break out the dominoes, you break out the Hennessy and the Cavassier, and you really just have you have a good time until the lights go out and the air conditioning goes out. And then you realize, okay, this might not have been a good idea with 20 people in one house. But those are just some of the memories that I have of riding through those hurricanes. And hopefully it's uneventful. It's hopefully no one gets power out for 2 weeks. No one gets injured. But obviously, Florida, we're thinking about you. Definitely on my mind. All of the people in Palm Beach County, Broward County, Dade County. I mean, I know people and companies and businesses up and down the coast. So you guys be safe out there, and good luck. All right. In other news, international news, this is an interesting story about Ikea and the conflict that Ikea potentially is going to have with Russia. And so there's an Ikea in Russia that every single week they host a contest where they pick an Ikea family. And this particular week, a couple was chosen that depicted 2 men holding hands in their submission. And so there's a competition. You send a picture of your families using the furniture from Ikea, and you're entered in a competition where you can win a coupon that's valued at about 1,000 rubles or 20 American dollars. And this week, the winner was 2 men holding hands. Now, I was going to say in America, that's really no big deal, but we're really just now transitioning out of a period where that was a big deal. But this is still a major deal in Russia. It's a major deal because there are laws on the books. There's a 2013 law passed by the Russian Duma, basically their house, their parliament, that passed a law banning, quote, gay propaganda. The bill would impose up to 3 years of jail time on those who offend religious believers, private individuals promoting homosexual behavior among minors face fines up to 5,000 rubles, which is about $155. Businesses and schools could be fined up to 500,000 rubles, or about $8,000. So the Russian law prohibits publications from promoting a distorted understanding that gay relations are equivalent to heterosexual ones. And to not just the law itself, but popular opinion in Russia with regards to the LGBTQ community, nearly half of Russian citizens believe that gay and lesbian citizens should not have equal rights as other citizens. So not only is what happened with Ikea potentially, quote unquote, considered quote unquote propaganda, but it also goes against the grain of almost half of Russians. And so just a little bit more on the contest. So people volunteer to have their picture taken with the furniture, right? It's really, I mean, it's not a huge benefit that they're getting, right? It's just something that you do. You bought some IKEA furniture and you want to take pictures in it. I did it. Everybody does it, right? You show, hey, everybody, we just bought this new bed from IKEA or whatever. People fill out a form. They submit a picture of them with their furniture in their home. And then you have other people who view the picture and vote online. So IKEA doesn't directly choose the winner. IKEA allows people who are on the website to choose the winner. And so this couple that depicts two men holding hands, they won. IKEA didn't choose them. The people chose them. So, I mean, good on them. Congratulations. That's what the people chose. It should be a good sign. But according to BBC World Service, IKEA spokesperson Igor Kessel said that he can't judge, and he had to come out and say this. You have to understand now, because they published this image, now they could be considered as to being spreading gay propaganda. So despite this, which is should be pretty innocuous at this point, just not a big deal whatsoever. But of course, every country is different. So Igor and IKEA had to come out and proactively say the following. He said that he can't judge whether they're gay or not. He said that the responses to it have been mixed, both good and bad. He doesn't think that this photo is promoting a gay agenda, and the state has not intervened, nor will IKEA kick them from the cover. So basically, he's saying we're going to leave it here. The state hasn't said anything yet, but we're not going to officially say that this is a gay couple. All right. The competition's rules have been set out already, so they're going to have to they're not going to change them, rather. And he said that the legal position does not allow for their legal position does not allow for discrimination, and their own values mean that all will be held to the same contest standards. So this is, again, an interesting story in terms of for LGBT rights globally. And it seems like it's such a small thing, right? And in fact, it is, right? The actual contest and the value of the prize, it's a small thing. But in Russia, this could be a huge thing for IKEA, not just because of the $8,000 fine, but because of the implications, the far reach, right? The global conversation around it, and the fact that almost half of Russian citizens don't view gay and lesbian couples as deserving equal rights. So I don't know. It will be interesting to see if the government actually gets involved per their own legislation. But if they do, I could say it's pretty accurate to conclude that the world is already watching. And speaking of international news and social issues, it seems like tonight is a social issue night, which is good because we haven't really talked social issues in a long time. There's a story out of Poland. The Polish parliament has voted overwhelmingly against a bill that would have created a near total ban on abortions. So there was a vote this morning that the vote was against. There was 352 to 58. They voted overwhelmingly against that bill that would have created a near total ban on abortions. Here's the details. So Poland is currently run by a socially conservative party called the Law and Justice Party. The bill was initially introduced. The members of parliament from the party supported it. It was initially backed. Here's the key thing. It was initially backed by the Catholic Church. But the bishops later backtracked and said that they could not support one of the proposals, which was to jail women who had an abortion. All right. So there's some things that we I don't know that we take it for granted here in the United States, but I think we run the risk of taking it for granted and having ourselves backpedal into these types of conditions where we're actually talking about sending people to jail over having an abortion. In fact, one of our presidential candidates even mentioned that and he, whatever context you want to say it, in context, he said that there should be some type of penalty for people who have abortions. He later backpedaled and took it back. But his gut instinct was to say this because he was pandering to the evangelical vote. So we kind of take it for granted and think that these things are not possible here. But I don't think that we can rest on our laurels. But again, so in Poland, this was backed by the Conservative Party as well as the religious institution. And anytime you get this marriage between conservative values, religious institutions, and the Conservative Party, you have an affront to individuals' rights, particularly when it comes to social issues, specifically dealing with quote unquote sexual morality and the church's and religion's definition of sexual morality. In other words, people want religious figures and religious politicians and conservative politicians want to legislate your sexual morality. This is as old as time almost. I mean, this is almost the a foundation of almost every single religion. It has been in huge part about controlling the sexual behavior of everyone, but women in specific, right? It's about controlling what women do with their bodies, and not just controlling what they do with their bodies, but in my opinion, as I read and understand the context of these rules, of these laws and these positions and these doctrines, it's often not about just controlling women's decisions, but controlling those decisions to the benefit of the men who are usually making the rules. In other words, you have men who want to control the sexual behavior of women for their own personal pleasure. And you see this through history, and it's still here today. It's still about dictating to people how we think they should behave sexually. Because ultimately, it's of course they're going to make, it's a conversation about the life of a child, right? Or the life of a fetus. That's just the front end of the conversation. If you unpack that with anyone and you dig a little bit deeper, you realize it's much more than about whether or not a woman carries a baby to term and gives birth to that child, right? It's really about whether or not the woman has the power to make this decision for herself. And this is what we see religion doing to women throughout history, but particularly when religion joins up with politics. And this is exactly what we see in Poland. And so this law that they rejected, right? It's a good thing that they rejected it. But the question is, why did it ever make its way to the table in the first place? Right? Why is this something? Why are we even entertaining the idea that a woman should be punished and sent to jail over abortions? And keep in mind, now in Poland, abortions are already largely banned in Poland, right? There's already a penalty to be for a doctor who performs an abortion. This law was going to go above and beyond that and penalize and criminalize a woman who gets an abortion. So it's amazing that this is something that almost became like, I know it failed, and I'm super glad that it failed, but the fact that it got that close, it came to a vote, right? It came to a vote. And had the protests that we'll talk about not ensued, had the bishops not backtracked, right? The bishops backtracked once they realized, oh, this is going to criminalize, this is going to put women in jail. So the bishops of the Catholic Church, they backtracked. But had they not, there's a possibility that this could have passed in Poland. Again, to draw a parallel here in the United States, don't think for a second that there aren't a group of politically influential people, not just the nut jobs, but the people with political power, politicians like Mike Pence. Don't think for a second that they would not desire to criminalize abortions, not just make them more difficult. Like in Texas, you have to drive how many hours? I think 2 or 3 hours to find a clinic where you can get an abortion. They don't want to just make it more difficult. They want to criminalize it. So in Poland, there were protests. They were protesting this vote. They were protesting this potential legislation, and tens of thousands of women protested. They protested against the law. As many as 24,000 women skipped work to protest this on Monday in Warsaw. Protesters waved black flags to draw attention. On social media, tens of thousands of Poles had posted pictures online in support of the protest in opposition to this legislation. And this was the thing that stood out the most to me. It wasn't just the women, but the women got support, overwhelming support from official organizations, the Polish employers, including restaurant owners, gallery owners, directors, universities, mayors. They got overwhelming support from their community, and they were able to put this law to bed and put it down. So kudos to the people who took action there, and just kind of wake us up here in the States, because there are still people who would love to take us back to a time where abortions were illegal and where abortions were being performed in back alleys and women were dying. And not just that realistic but dramatic picture of it, but to a time where women did not have that control and that say so over their own body. Now, there's still the underlying conversation that that this is still a political football here in the United States. Here's the thing, and I've said this, I don't think I've talked about this in quite some time, but here's the reality. I think according to the Guttmacher Institute, but 65% of all abortions are performed on patients who identify as Christian, either Catholic or evangelical, mainline Protestant. 65%. The biggest push against a woman's right to choose comes from the evangelical and the Catholic churches. My thing is this, twofold. One, if you've got a problem with the number of abortions being performed in America, wouldn't it behoove you to address your congregants? Because if 65% of the people in America, and of course, I think there's the majority of people in America who identify as Christians. I don't have those numbers handy, but of course, you're going to expect a large number of them to be Christian. However, they are Christian and they're sitting in somebody's church on somebody's Sunday. Wouldn't it be, instead of trying to use the political system to fix your shortcomings in your church, why not just preach it in your church and let the political system do what it's supposed to do, which is to neither serve church nor hinder church? Just let politics be agnostic and you preach what you want to preach in your church. Because, imagine if we reduced abortions by the 65% of Christians who get them. Wouldn't that be one of the greatest victories for the people who are running around for the right to life? The right to lifers? That would be a tremendous victory. So number one, start at home. Start in your churches. Number two, why not address the overwhelming issues that lead women to these types of difficult decisions in the first place? Right? We have all of the concern in the world for a child before it's born and have zero concern for him or her after that child is born. And we have zero concern about the economic conditions. And I don't want to throw the wrong stat out there, but I would say it's like a plurality of the reason people make this decision. The plurality is an economic decision. It's an economic decision. And it's not what you think. If you look at the most recent data, it's usually married couples, middle-aged married couples who have to make this difficult type of decision. And that decision is usually predicated on their economics. So instead of addressing the reasons why so many abortions are performed in America, we don't want to talk about that. Let's just outlaw them. Let's just make it illegal. Because we can't teach our own congregation, right? Our own congregation's not listening to us. So then, hell, let's go and get the government to do what we can't do in our own church. And no matter how logical that argument just was, you're going to have people who fill up the comment section on this particular clip and say, "Oh, you want to just, you want to kill babies." Like you would be amazed. Go back and look at any of the videos that I've done about a woman's right to choose in the context of the religious argument against it and the illogical arguments against it. And you will see that no matter how much you explain this to people, they who are right to lifers, they just completely ignore the logic and completely operate on the emotion of it. And it reminds me of, and then we'll move on to another story, but it reminds me of when I was a grad assistant at a school in Florida, at a university in Florida. And I was walking to class to take care of the class for the professor that day. And there was a right to life protest outside. And right to life protest. And they had all these huge banners, huge posters of unborn fetuses, the aborted fetuses, and just gruesome graphic images. And like the posters stood at least, I would say, I'm only 5'6", so they were at least 12 feet tall, right? They were huge, and they had about 10 of them. But then at the end of it, they had a picture of the Obama family, and they laid the blame of the entire conversation about abortions at the feet of President Obama vis-a-vis the Democratic Party, and basically saying that the Republican Party is the option for people who want to, quote unquote, end abortions. And when I engaged, because I decided, I'm like, all right, let's talk to these people. When I engaged in the conversation with them and we started to unpack all of the fallacies that surround that assumption, right? The fact that the reason people are opting to have abortions, or even the fact that the rate of abortions were higher during George W. Bush's term, right? And so here's the other thing, and the fact that there was a period during George W. Bush's term that they had both the House, the Senate, the presidency, and a majority conservative bench. And they did absolutely nothing for the right to lifers. So here I am explaining to them their own issue, that you want to politicize this and use this as a political football to help elect Republicans, yet and still the Republican Party has done nothing for you on this. And to make that worse, to add insult to injury, the rate of abortions were higher underneath George W. Bush than the previous years, than I believe underneath Bill Clinton. Did any of that matter? No, none of it mattered. You know why? Because it's not an intellectual conversation. It's not a logical position. It's not an intellectual position nor a logical position. It is a political position. So much of the right to life movement is 100% political. And if they were really concerned about the lives of unborn children, then they would help address the issues that lead families and women to have to make these difficult decisions in the first place. But they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that because they aren't really concerned about the life of the child after it's born. They're only concerned about the emotional capital that they can collect on these conversations. Every 4 years, they can collect on it and take it to the polls. All right. 857-600-0518. I told you I was going to say it. There it is. I knew it was coming, and I tried my best not to say it, but I knew it was coming. Speaking of, I was watching a clip of Morning Joe this morning, and I would say at this point, I would say he's a friend at this point, from Yahoo Politics. Yahoo Politics editor John Ward was discussing Donald Trump and the evangelical vote. And he was discussing how a lot of young evangelicals have moved away from Donald Trump because they just can't connect with his lifestyle, right? They can't connect with, and they're in a tough spot because even though they can't connect with Donald Trump, their other option is someone who they believe, and I'm sure some of you believe, is the devil. Right. But the reason they believe she's a devil is totally different than than a lot of my listeners would believe Hillary Clinton's a devil. They believe Hillary Clinton is the devil or Satan's spawn or just a really bad political choice. They believe she's a bad political choice because they feel that Hillary Clinton is going to infringe on their religious rights. And they feel like Hillary Clinton is going to damage the right to life movement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but they're stuck in this really bad place where they can't bring themselves to vote for somebody like Trump because he doesn't personify anything remotely connected to their faith, right? And at the same time, they can't find their way over to Hillary Clinton. So they're probably going to end up not voting this time around. But in defense of Donald Trump, there are a lot of religious leaders, white and a handful of black, maybe like literally could probably count them on my hands, black leaders, preachers who support Donald Trump as this great moral leader or a reformed, quote unquote, born again sinner who now all of a sudden, because he's running for president, we should forgive and he just completely forget about all of his indiscretions because he needs to be the president of the United States. Not just in I guess maybe it is just in opposition to Hillary Clinton. So they're trying to rally the evangelical vote for Donald Trump in opposition to Hillary Clinton on the basis of traditional marriage, right? That's a huge one for them still, and the right to life. Like, that's the only two issues that matter to a lot of religious institutions. Never mind the gross poverty in their neighborhoods. Never mind the racial problems, the police brutality, never mind any of the other issues, never mind some of their congregants having immigration issues, never mind the relationship that their congregation has to the broader community. All these things they're willing to ignore politically because of traditional marriage and the right to choose. the right to life, rather. Let me correct myself. And so they have been willing, evangelicals have been willing to completely ignore anything about Trump that is very, for instance, let's just go down a list of things about Donald Trump that, and this is not about Donald Trump so much as it is about evangelicals, right? Donald Trump goes to Liberty University and talks about how the Bible is his second, like it's his number one favorite book, the Bible, right? It's a great book. Nothing beats the Bible. That's exactly how he said it. Then he turns around and refers to a book in the Bible as 2 Corinthians. Now, you don't have to have gone to church, but maybe 1 week, go to a wedding, and somebody's going to quote 2 Corinthians. But instead of saying 2 Corinthians, he demonstrated for the world how much he does not know about the Bible whatsoever when he referred to it as 2 Corinthians, right? Never mind his transgressions, his indiscretions, all those things. I don't personally care about any of those things. But what I care about always is the hypocrisy, right? I don't really care about Donald Trump's infidelity. That's his business. That's his wife's business. That's their life to deal with. But what I care about are people who are willing to hold up these religious standards as being something that's preeminently important on one hand, but when it becomes politically inexpedient, they're willing to drop it and say, oh, Donald Trump is a good God-fearing man. No, the hell he's not. He is a convenient Christian. He is an opportunistic Christian, just like he's an opportunistic racist. And God, I shouldn't even say racism, because now I'm going to take me onto the other vein. You have religious leaders who are willing to walk lockstep. I don't care about Byrd. I don't care about Senator Byrd, who was in the Klan and he recanted and repented at his old age. I don't care about him. I'm talking about religious leaders who are walking in lockstep today with neo-Nazis. This is not hyperbole. They are at his rallies. The American Nazi Party, Klansmen, they're standing in solidarity with these people who are often Christians or identify themselves as Christians. They are willing to stand side by side with these Christian terrorist groups in opposition of so many issues that are important to you and I. Black Lives Matter, police reform, economic justice, the marriage equality, the right to choose. So they would rather be identified and stand side by side with the very worst dredges of society in terms of morality, in terms of justice, in terms of just loving your neighbor as yourself, also that they can find a way to support Donald Trump. I get it. I understand why they do it. But to me, it is the greatest example of hypocrisy in this election, probably second to, I don't know. To me, it stands out the most. Because if you're going to worry about religion and try to impose your religion on other people every day of the week, how hypocritical is it of you to completely ignore all of the quote unquote evils that you have to ignore to align yourself with Donald Trump? So younger evangelicals, data's coming out showing younger evangelicals are actually not able to make that logical leap or illogical leap, right? They're not able to resolve that dissonance in their mind. They see that there is a problem with identifying themselves with a person like Donald Trump and the people that Donald Trump bring. But these are a younger group of evangelicals, while their parents are just fine. Their parents are on TV justifying everything about Donald Trump, from his indiscretions to his language, to his, he cusses more than me. And, I cuss a lot on my show, right? They excuse everything about him in favor of supporting him just so that they can oppose Hillary Clinton. And I guess maybe to some of you guys, I guess you understand, what hurdle will we not overcome just so that we can oppose Hillary Clinton? There's probably no limit. I don't know why the hell I just played the clap there. So anyway, I just don't believe, for the life of me, I can't see how people man, religion and politics, that intersection, like, yes. Anyway, the next section I'll talk about, you'll understand it why. There is a difference. Like, what type of Christian are you? What type of religious person are you, right? Because you have the religious types who are more interested in imposing their beliefs on you than they are even living up to their own standard, right? They are more focused on your behavior and your quote unquote morality than their own. And they're willing to drop theirs at a drop of a dime when it's expedient for them to drop their standards. All the while looking at you and say, no, what you're doing is so right. The same group of religious people, the same group of Christians who ignored the reality of slavery, who actually thought slaves were happy, who used religion to justify slavery, the same group of people who justified Jim Crow with religion, the same people who justified years of right now, the same people who justify police brutality. I guarantee, go into their timeline on Twitter right now, go to their social media page, and the same exact people who are trying to tell you how to live your life, trying to tell you that what you're doing is so wrong, are the same exact people who are excusing the murder of black people and people of color at the hands of police. I guarantee you there's a direct correlation. Speaking of what type of Christian are you? What type of religious person are you? Tomorrow is the big day, birth of a nation. Now, I haven't had a chance to talk about birth of the nation much on this show, and that's been intentional. I've been avoiding the conversation about the movie from Nate Parker, where he gives the account of Nat Turner, the Nat Turner Rebellion, which is expressly about, it's about the use of religion to oppress and the use of religion to throw off the oppressor. Like, it's directly, the life of Nat Turner is completely about a black slave preacher who was taught to use religion to make the slaves be docile and placid. But when he read that same exact Bible and he read it from the eyes of justice, it led him to leading a rebellion where, I mean, how many people was it? 50, 60, 56. I mean, hang on. How many people did they end up killing? 55 to 65 people estimated that they killed. All right. Before I go off and talk about Nat Turner and about just his role in the black history, for lack of a better word, there's a more convincing word, a more definitive word that I'm looking for, but I can't think of it. The reason I haven't talked about the movie is because of the controversy surrounding Nate Parker and his acquittal, his rape charge and subsequent acquittal, and the unfortunate suicide of the young woman that he was accused of raping. She committed suicide many years later. But there are a lot of conversations being held about that, and rightfully so. And the questions about his involvement and just not even involvement so much then, but handling it now, and the culpability and his responsibility to addressing rape culture in America. And I tell you that I'm going to talk about that on the bonus show. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about that in my closed closet of supporters, very close supporters, because I avoided it for a lot of reasons. And, because I have a lot of feelings about it, man. I feel some kind of way about it. I feel really angry about the rape culture in the United States. But at the same time, there are this story is so important that there's so many Americans who do not know this story. And this is a great opportunity for America to be exposed to a different side of not slavery from, I mean, we get a lot of slave stories, but we rarely get this story. Like we're taught this in passing. I remember when I taught middle school history for like a year. I don't know, 2 years. I lose track of time of years, but it was a passing reference. It was literally one line out of a 300-page history book, the reference to the Nat Turner Rebellion. Not only the historical perspective, but it's a very important story from the role of religion perspective. Because too often in America, right now, today, religion is back to being used like it's been used historically. It's been used as a tool to make people docile and complacent and subservient. And religion, the most recent iteration of that is what Eddie Glaude Jr. of Princeton University referred to as the theology that's perfect for neoliberalism, the prosperity gospel, right? That's where black religion has gone after the last 40 years. It's like this perfect gospel to make people, all they want to think about is how they can get money. And how the only reason they don't have enough money is because they didn't pray hard enough or they didn't give enough money to the church, right? Just like the meritocracy says that the only reason you don't have money is because you didn't study hard enough and you didn't do the right internship, et cetera. You know, it's the perfect religion, perfect theology for neoliberalism. And so this movie with Nat Turner presents this fascinating take and introduces back into the American conversation the radical role of black religion, particularly black Christianity, and the liberation theology and the theology of the viewpoint of looking at the Bible and seeing the progressive as well as the revolutionary message of a socialist Jesus. You know, the liberation gospel is like a religion that would eviscerate this neoliberal economic system and the neoconservative foreign policy, hegemony abroad, empire abroad, and domination for money, like and the intersectionality of those issues with social issues, and the liberation gospel has been one throughout American history, particularly the black liberation theology, has been one that pushed revolution. And that's, Nat Turner wasn't like a liberation theologist. He was a slave who read the Bible and saw that the Bible was demanding justice, and the Bible called for justice. And actually some quotes here from his actual journal. Turner said on May 12th, he said, he heard a loud noise from the heavens, and the Spirit instantly appeared to him and said, the serpent was loosed, and Christ had laid down the yoke, and he had borne the sins of men, and that he should take it up and fight against the serpent. For the time was fast approaching when the first should be last and the last should be first. Right? So he's taking this interpretation of the Bible, this reading of the Bible, and saying it's time for us to tear this system down. I mean, who's using religion for that today? Whereas we have the evangelicals trying to use a religion as a bludgeoning tool, as a tool of oppression, to keep rights away from the LGBTQ community, to keep rights away from women, to maintain the systemic oppression that we still have, that's still the vestiges of slavery and Jim Crow. They're using religion as a means of continuing this. And they give black communities this, you can get rich quick if you just pay enough to the church and you pray hard enough and you wave your hands hard enough. They gave us this opiate for the masses so that they can silence this Nat Turner styled revolutionary spirit. And that's one of the reasons why, and I'll talk about Nate Parker and his role in the bonus show, but most assuredly, this is something that America needs to be reminded of. More importantly than just America in general, it's like the black church has a significant grip on the black community. So much so that it drives people like Dr. Umar Johnson, and others from the Hotep community. It drives them crazy, right? To see that the black church has this dominating influence on black politics, black economics, and black conversations. And I can't say that I disagree with this anger at the black church, because where have they been? Where have they been during the Black Lives Matter movement? Where have they been during all of these years? You know where? Too many, not all of them. There have been some glimmering, shining examples of what you can use organized religion for good. But the most part, they've been collecting money in churches and building bigger churches and buying bigger homes and buying fancy cars and releasing albums and buying the fanciest suits and getting their tailor-made suits. So I understand the irritation and the agitation and the aggravation with the black church. But Birth of a Nation, if you don't see anything else, go see that, because I want people to see the role that, because here's the thing. Here's the last thing I'll say about it. And I can't believe it's almost time to get off the air, right? I honestly didn't think I was going to do a full hour. I thought I was going to do 45 minutes tonight. Here's the thing. If you're waiting on religion to disappear, yeah, good luck with that. Religion ain't going nowhere. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And even if we manage to get rid of religion, you just made it stronger by trying to get rid of it, right? When you try to suppress and oppress something and erase something, you're inevitably going to make it bigger and stronger, right? So since religion isn't going anywhere, and I'm saying this because I have like a really broad audience. I have people who are religious, and I have people who are just like militant atheists. And even they know that I am religious myself, or I'm a Christian. I can't say I'm really religious, but I'm a Christian. But since religion isn't going anywhere, it just makes sense to me that we remind people of the good that can be done with it. Because if we don't, then we're going to always be battling people like evangelicals and the people like the Catholic Church in Poland and all of these institutions that have significant amounts of power, and they wield that power to keep groups marginalized for whatever scripture they're interpreting that day. Whereas Nat Turner read those same pages and focused on the ability to use religion to set people free, not from just this metaphysical spiritual oppression, but the very real oppression that comes from colonial, white, patriarchal, systemic oppression. So Nat Turner, Birth of a Nation, go see it. And if you want to know my positions on Nate Parker and this whole incident and the nuances of it, I'm going to have that close conversation with my patrons, because I want to keep that close to the chest. And if you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/the BPD show and become a contributor for like $3 a month or something. Buy me a coffee, one coffee a month. All right, folks. That's it. We still have about 4 minutes left, but I think we've covered and done everything that we need to do. So I will. Tomorrow is a full hour bonus show. I'm going to address the Nate Parker issue at the top of the show. So that's going to be the very first thing that I address tomorrow. Patrons, no bonus show tonight. The bonus show will be the full hour bonus show on tomorrow. I appreciate you. Could not do it without you. And I will see you next week.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com the BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.